Assalamu alaikum, my dear participants. We begin our Islam study circle today, and as usual, the way that we will adopt is that we will study a Quranic verse and follow it up with a Hadith and then a verse from the Bible, and also later on we'll discuss a common misconception regarding Islam. Uh, Let me start off by the Quranic verse that is going to be studied today. This verse has been taken from Surah Saf. Verses are actually 10 to 14. The words are, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min azabin alim تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ومساكن طيبة في جنات عدن ذلك الفوز العظيم وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى ابن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله. So a translation of these verses would be, shall I guide you to a deal that will save you from a grievous torment? Profess faith in God and His Messenger and fight for God's cause with your wealth and persons. This would be better for you if you understand. As a result, God will forgive your sins and admit you to gardens below which streams flow. He will lodge you in splendid abodes in eternal gardens. This is great success. And He will also grant what you desire, help from God and a victory near at hand. And O Prophet, give these glad tidings to the faithful. Believers, be God's helpers, the way Jesus, son of Mary, said to His disciples, who will be my helper in the cause of God? The disciples said or replied, we are God's helpers. So, my dear participants, the Quranic verses under discussion generally deal with a very important issue, and that is actually a requirement of faith, and that is that there are circumstances, there are situations in which, just as we have to express our faith through righteous deeds, through our own moral being, through professing good conduct, at the same time there are instances in which we need to realize that religion, God's religion on earth, needs our assistance, needs our help through our persons, through our wealth, through our skills. And this has been actually highlighted very nicely in the verses that we have studied. And this is one of the reasons that we have actually labeled this passage as supporting the cause of religion. So supporting the cause of religion actually means that wherever we are, in whichever society we live in whichever country we are, religion in some form or the other needs assistance, needs our help. This could be in the form of educating people on religion. This could be in the form of building mosques or educational institutions. It could be in the form of publishing books, or it could be in the form of publishing Qurans and related material. So it could be all sorts of things. So what we need to understand is that just as there are some permanent requirements of our faith, there are certain contingent requirements of our faith also, and that is whenever there is some need, there is some void which has to be filled, then we as Muslims have to come forward. We have to step forward for the cause of religion. And as these verses say, that the reward for this is that the Almighty will forgive our sins. يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. And then it goes on to say, وَيُدْخِلْكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً فِي جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ. That God will forgive our sins and admit us to gardens below which streams flow, and He will also lodge us in splendid abodes in eternal gardens. And then you see what the Quran says, This is real success. Zalikal Fawzul Azim. And we need to understand that real success is the success which the Quran has outlined, and that is that we, through our persons, through our wealth, through our skills, through our abilities, are able to help the cause of religion in whatever way we can. And this has been followed up actually by citing the example of a very, very revered prophet of God, Jesus, son of Mary. And he, when in his own times, he had asked for the help of for his companions who are called Hawaris by the Quran, or the apostles of Jesus. And when he asked their help, he said, Man ansari Allah, who is going to be my helper for the cause of God? And they replied, Nahnu ansarullah, which actually was a leap forward. They said that we are God's helpers. In other words, they meant that whatever reason or whatever cause religion requires us to do, we are ready for that. So, dear viewers, we need to understand that this is a very, very important yet neglected area of religion. It's not just we have to express our faith. It's not just that we have to do righteous deeds. We have to understand that we need to look around us and see and find what are the needs of religion of our times. And if you ask my humble opinion today, one of the greatest needs of religion is to promote critical thinking, to promote dialogue, to promote the culture of debate amongst people, in which if there are questions regarding religion, if there is an academic discussion which has to be conducted regarding religion, especially with regard to the new generation, it has to be encouraged. And religion today can only prosper, it can only be meaningful, it can only have an impact if we as adults, if we as parents, if we as teachers realize our responsibility, that it has to be communicated through dialogue. It has to be communicated in a very academic way, by reasoning out what we want other people to understand. It should not be something as if we are imposing our views, and we need to understand that the Quran itself never adopted this methodology. The Quran, wherever it wants us to believe certain things, it's not that it wants us to blindly follow these things. It tells us the reason behind why we need to understand and follow certain things. So, as true followers of the Quran, we need to reciprocate. And whenever we would like our religion to be communicated to others, it has to be through intellectual reasoning. It has to be through rational reasoning, by telling people why certain things have to be done and why certain things are to be avoided. And as I said, this culture of debate, this culture of discussion is the need of the hour regarding religion. And this can only happen if we allow people to ask questions, and we not only let them ask questions, but also allow them to raise objections if they have on religion, and not get offended if they have certain objections. Because you see, objections and questions, and at times harsh criticism, always has a substance in it. And we have to actually gauge that substance. We have to understand that substance. We have to ignore the harsh language. We have to forget the fact that people are actually trying to raise eyebrows. Because if there is substance in the criticism, if there is something which we need to understand, then it has to be communicated. To give you a very stark example, we have these issues like the cartoon controversies, in which we know that cartoons and caricatures are made, which of course are a cause of our own being hurt. We feel hurt about it. But there's one thing that we feel hurt about it, and there's another thing that how should we deal about it. So instead of criticizing other people, instead of condemning them for these cartoons and caricatures and other derogatory literature, the best way out is to understand the criticism that they are actually trying to express. Remember, literature, fine arts, and things like cartoons, and these are very subtle ways of expressing opinions. And instead of getting offended, the way out is to grasp the criticism behind it, to understand why are people trying to criticize us and what is the reason behind this. And if we are able to address the reason, if we have the emotional stability as well as a rational capability to not only understand what is actually being put forth, but also make a cogent reply, then I think this is the best way to deal with such situations. Instead of getting reactionary, instead of burning things, instead of expressing our own tantrums, this is not the right way. What good does this achieve? It only vents our emotions. It only expresses our anger, and that anger dissipates in thin air. It has no productive element in it. The productive element that we can actually add to it is by understanding all these things. And I do keep emphasizing this, that this is our responsibility. This is our primary obligation, especially towards the new generation, especially towards people who would like to understand what religion is. And we, through our own understanding, need to unlearn things that we have at times gathered from here and there. So religion has to be understood from authentic sources, not through hearsay. This again is a problem that we are facing, that a lot of things which are mere hearsay, which are merely things that we have listened and received and just gather them in our hearts and minds, we continue to repeat them without verifying them. So it's essential that we verify the information that we have. And if anyone asks us or tells us that this is what religion says in a certain matter, we must ask him or her, where does it say that? Does the Quran say so? Does the Hadith say so? Or is it that you have just heard some opinion of some scholar or some luminary and you're repeating it without understanding actually its source? So we need to unlearn certain things in order to learn correctly, and also promote critical thinking, promote this culture of dialogue and debate. And as I said, the verses that we are studying is they basically relate to how we should help the cause of religion. And today, the biggest help that we can perhaps provide religion is to critically understand the concepts of religion, to make ourselves not only emotionally attached, but intellectually attached to religion as well. Because once we are able to do so, we will have this feeling that it is not only intellectually satisfying our inner curiosity, it's also a very, very compelling argument that it is making us that we should deliver whatever truth that we have understood. It will inspire us, it will motivate us to communicate it to others. Because once the truth dawns upon ourselves, such is the power of truth, such is the profundity of truth, that we as believers are bound to retaliate, to reflect, in fact, this truth that has dawned upon us by communicating it to others. And as I said, this communication has to be through cogent arguments, not through a harsh voice, not through imposing an opinion, but through very humble, in a very non-self-righteous way. We need to communicate what religion actually tells us. Of course, this does not mean that there are not other ways or areas or fields in which religion needs our help, because there are different areas, different situations in different countries, and each country, each society has its own needs and requirements. As I said, at times even printing the Qurans, or at times providing education to young people regarding the Quran, or at times building mosques and libraries. These are all very important areas in which we have to help religion. And see what an emotional appeal the Quran has made by actually using these words, that we are God's helpers. So when we are actually helping His religion, God does not need our help. Of course, that's a very, very very obvious thing. But in spite of the fact that the Almighty does not need our help, this is how He actually expresses our help. He says that you are actually helping me, because when you are doing something for the cause of God, God is actually expressing His own scheme of things. His grand scheme of things is that He does not accomplish these things through His own hands directly or forces them, or has them accomplished through his angels. He has this graciousness of letting us do or help, or it's like playing our role in expressing and in furthering the cause of religion. And what better an opportunity that we can have than becoming God's helpers. And I would say this beautiful phrase of Ansarullah, which means helpers of God, it really does inspire us that we as individuals, we as responsible people, we need to assess things that we can do for the cause of religion as best as we can in the most effective way that we can do them. Now let us move on to the next section of our study circle, and this is basically a hadith that we are going to study. So the words are, this hadith has actually been taken from the Sahih of Imam Muslim. The words are, An Abi Huraira anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam qal, إذا نظر أحدكم إلى من فضل عليه في المال والخلق فلينظر إلى من هو أسفل منه ممن فضل عليه. It's an outstanding piece of advice, and only a prophet of God perhaps has this wisdom of instructing us in such an effective, in such a profound way. Look what the words say. Abu Huraira reported that God's messenger said, when any one of you sees someone who is blessed with more wealth and better physique, which means of course outward appearance as well, he should also see him who has lesser wealth and lesser physique. So what the point which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is trying to make here is that we need to count our blessing always. Instead of looking at people who are wealthier than us, instead of looking towards people who have a better status in our society, instead of looking at people who have a better appearance than us, the Prophet says that why should people not look at people who are lowly placed than us, who are lesser in status than us, who are perhaps not as physically capable than us, because this is what is going to produce gratitude in us. When we look at people who have more than us, it always produces that longing. It produces jealousy. It produces that sense of deprivation. The Prophet does not want this to happen with his ummah, with his followers. He wants to tell us that if you think that there are other people who are blessed than you, who have more than you, then you must also see that there are so many thousands and millions and billions of people maybe around you or even far away who are much lesser off than you. Look at your eyes. Look at your normal human body. Look at the things that the Almighty has given you. Shelter, a place to live in, clothes to wear, food to eat, education, so many basic things that we take for granted. And instead of realizing that the Almighty has been generous to us, we brood, we complain, and we think that the Almighty has deprived us of a lot. So these wise words of the Prophet, I think they are an eye-opener, no less than an eye-opener to all of us, that instead of thinking and complaining and brooding and telling God, well, why is it that I have not been given that beautiful bungalow or a beautiful car or such an appearance or a beautiful voice or a stature, etc., etc. The thing is that whatever the Almighty has given us is still far, the blessings, they far outnumber a lot of other people who are lesser off than us. So the Prophet, and of course the Quran, wants us to realize that we have been blessed wherever we are placed in the society, whichever strata we are in. We should understand that there are people who are lesser off than us, people who have the ability maybe at times to outdo us, but in reality we would find them still that they, in their own capacity, instead of complaining and brooding, Instead of the fact that they express their own complaints to God, they in fact express gratitude to God. So if we have to look at people who are really better off than us, then we have to look at people who are more pious. So the whole angle has changed here. Instead of looking at people who are higher in status to us, we should, on the other hand, look at people who are more pious than us, who are more virtuous than us, who are more practicing than us, because that will inspire us to become more practicing towards them. So we need to understand that as far as virtue is concerned, we have to look up to the highest person. Of course, the Prophet and other prophets of God, they are the highest people that we are to follow. But as far as our worldly stature is concerned, we have to look below us. We will find several people below us. And this, of course, is the fountainhead of gratitude. And viewers, if you would like to know that gratitude stands at the base of religion, if you ask me the essence of religion, of course, there's a lot to be said regarding the essence of religion. But one basic pillar of this essence is gratitude. Is this expression of thankfulness to the Almighty, is to acknowledge what He has given us, is to always express in words that we have been blessed. We have so much to count on, and yet we take things for granted. And this, of course, is something that we should consciously avoid. So, viewers, let's now move on to the next section of our study circle. And this is Bible verse of the day. This Bible verse has been taken from the Proverbs, which of course are the Proverbs of the Prophet Solomon. And again, a very, very outstanding piece of advice. The title of these words or this verse is actually Taming the Tongue. Again, a very important area of human life, that we have to control our tongue. We have to guard what we have to say or what we utter every day. And let me read out the verse before you. This is chapter number 12 and verse 18. It says, "There are some whose uncontrolled talk is like the wounds of a sword, but the tongue of the wise makes one well again." So in a few words, how beautifully Prophet Solomon has expressed this, that the wound of the tongue is deeper than the wound of the sword. Something that we all know. It's basically what you say to other people, the way you deal with them, your attitude with them, which makes or breaks. The tongue is the biggest connector or the disconnector, either way. It can connect you to people, and it can cause a big disconnection. One word, one false word, one inappropriate word can break relationships which are years, which have spent years with you. So we need to understand that the biggest test that we are put through is the test of this tongue. And we need to understand that this is perhaps the most profound in our own homes, in our own houses, where we are tested every time, every day. It's like a 24/7, 364 test, because we are uttering something or the other. And whatever we are uttering, if it is not appropriate, it is bound to hurt other people. It is bound to make them sad. It is bound to make them sorrowful. On the other hand, if we weigh what we are going to utter, it can make other people happy. It can make their lives, it can make their day. We need to understand that small words of kindness, small words which encourage others, words which produce this sense of appreciation. You see, at times we do like other people, we do appreciate them, but we don't express this appreciation through our tongue. This is something which is really, really lacking at times. And this is where we need to make up. When we say something, when we feel that a person has some good qualities, let's express those qualities through our words. Because this is what is going to encourage the other person. This is what is going to really lift up his or her spirit. And one cannot imagine how encouraged one feels when a compatriot, when a comrade, when a friend praises one for one's attributes, for one's qualities. Of course, it's not something of a unbecoming nature, but it's like expressing that a person has these qualities. When we express our appreciation of a person's qualities, of course, it has a tremendous impact. So this is how we should use our tongue. And a very important thing here, my dear viewers, is that one of the worst things that we need to unlearn probably is this art of criticizing other people, is the art of complaining, is the art of brooding, is the art of always thinking negatively and expressing negative emotions. So our tongues, I would say, the most common use of our tongues besides this is that we gossip a lot. We rely on hearsay a lot. We do not verify a lot of things and transmit them. So the biggest area in which we need to improve regarding our own tongue, regarding what the Prophet Solomon has said here, is that we need to avoid backbiting. We must try to avoid discussing people in absentia. We have this habit of discussing other people in absentia, and we have a habit of criticizing them. We have a habit of calling them various names. This practice needs to be put an end to. And this is something which plagues our everyday communication. It's simply too much. And if we are sitting together as friends, I can assure you, I am myself a part, I think, I am an equal accomplice to this crime, that when we sit together, we often discuss people who are not amongst us, and that too in a not a very good manner. We often discuss their vices and their sins or their shortcomings, and of course this is a very, very negative way. We don't give the other person the chance to defend himself or herself because he or she is not present there. So these wounds of the tongue, they do reach the other person. They do cause that injury. We don't understand at times that when we criticize people, when we gossip about people, this criticism, this gossip reaches them. And of course, when it does, then it does cause a lot of harm. It does cause a lot of bad taste. And of course, this at times leads to breakup in relationships. So criticism has to be polite. We don't need our words to be harsh. Our stance should be maybe firm without our words being harsh. And then we should avoid a repetitive criticism. It's not going to be of any good use. It's going to be counterproductive. Then again, a person who is doing something wrong, correcting him right at that time when he's doing something wrong is again not a very appropriate way. We would perhaps not understand that this is something which is going to correct that person because he's going to react. So we need to weigh each and every word that we utter. And let me tell you that if we do so, perhaps we would remain silent for the most part of the day. And silence, let me tell you, is itself a virtue. I think we should only speak when words are louder than silence. When we know that only words can express, for we know that silence itself is just something very expressive. It does communicate a lot at the right time. It should not be counted as a weakness when the time is to remain silent. So with these words, now let us come to the fourth and last part of our segment. And here we're going to study or discuss a common misconception regarding Islam. So the misconception that I've chosen today to discuss is again something which is a very common thing which is found in our societies, in our culture, in most Muslim third world countries. And that is the issue of istikhara. People think that istikhara is like a hotline. It's like something which if we utter at night, if we recite at night and then go to sleep, then we are going to see a dream at night. And that dream, whatever it is, if it's a good dream, it will be something from God which tells us that whatever we are thinking of is the right thing. And if it's a bad dream, we do think then that the Almighty is actually telling us to stop from what we intend to do. So this is a very, very common misconception, and people think that this is a way, or a short way, if not less than that, to communicate to God and to find out the will of God regarding a certain perplexing situation. Now, we need to understand a number of things regarding istikhara and what actually does this istikhara mean. First of all, the word istikhara means to demand good, to find out what's good from the Almighty. And it's like a prayer, it's like a dua, it's like a supplication. And just like any other supplication, it does not always is bound to be answered. At times it is deferred, at times it is answered, at times nothing happens. You see, just like any other dua, just like any other supplication, just like any other prayer, the istikhara is a prayer. And such beautiful are the words of this istikhara that it actually tells us that we have done our best, we have expended all our intellect, we have expended every bit of our mind in finding out what we should do. We are at crossroads. We have 2 or 3 equal options before us. We have done our level best. And now we are in a situation in which all these 2 or 3 options perhaps are equally good to us, and we would like God to help us. So first of all, we need to understand that istikhara first of all begins by first expending our own intellectual effort and our own energy in finding out what the right way is. For unless we do our part, the Almighty is not going to do his part. He first likes to undertake our own responsibility, and that is to expend our own energy, our own experience, our own knowledge to find out as best as we can what the right thing is. And then to pray to the Almighty and think that he will guide us. Now this guidance is generally thought in the case of istikhara to be a dream that perhaps would come at night, and that dream will tell us whether we are doing something right or wrong. Again, this is a very common misconception. Dream is nothing but a dream. It's basically a psychological phenomena. It's like the reflection of our own subconscious. And of course, it is also a means through which at times the Almighty does communicate, as we know. But then we are not sure if it is from God. We can only posit ourselves that perhaps a good dream is from God. But again, whatever is seen in a dream has to be analyzed in the light of intellect, because this is not like a hotline in which the Almighty is going to tell us that this is what his intention is. And then, as I said, God's intention is given to us at times, again, in the form of a presumptive, it's like a presumptive way, it's like more of a conjectural way, it's not a certain way, and that conjectural and speculative way must not defy reason, must not defy Quran, must not defy the Sunnah, must not defy established sense. And as I said, at times there is no answer at all. So just like any other dua, it is a dua or a prayer that we need to make to the Almighty. We can do it several times, but the answer to this prayer could be absolute silence. The answer to this prayer could be guidance from God through any means. It could be a person comes along and says something, and suddenly it dawns upon us, oh, here is the right way. At times an event happens and it is a means of guiding us. At times we do get a signal even in a dream, and then, as I said, that too is like a conjectural thing. It's not to be taken in a certain way. It should not defy sense and reason. So it is all these stipulations in the light of which we need to understand what istikhara is. And finally, we also need to understand that istikhara has to be done by the person who is in trouble himself, who would like to find out. It's like being in a situation and then trying to find out from God that help, that the guidance that we need from the Almighty. So this is something that I would have wanted to communicate to you regarding istikhara. We need to understand that it's not a hotline, it's not a certain phenomena in which at times I have seen women and men trying to find out for example, choose the spouses of their children, and they do istikhara, and they see all sorts of things, and then they end up actually rejecting a very appropriate proposal simply because they think that the dream they have seen is a very, very horrid dream. So this is an absolutely wrong perception. Horrid dreams, if istikhara is done, are not to be taken the way we do take them, if they defy sense and reason, if they defy knowledge, if they defy our experience and practice, because we know that dreams also are, it's not just that these dreams come from God, they have all sorts of sources. Our own subconscious is a source. Evil dreams are from Satan as well. So we need to understand that dreams are not a sure shot indication regarding istikhara. As I said, there are a number of other indications, and there could be no indication at all as well. So we have to understand that istikhara is nothing but a dua, nothing but a supplication, nothing but a prayer to the Almighty, which can be answered, which can be totally left silent and unheard, or it could be deferred. So, my dear viewers, with these words, we do come to the end of our session of this Islam Study Circle. I hope that we have been able to discuss some of the important issues in religion, and inshallah, hope to see you next time, next week at the same time. Until then, it is Khuda Hafiz.